Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Oh, I'm so excited. Um, the name of our workshop is This Land Was Made for You and Me, and we are going to make collages inspired by Rosie Lee Tompkins quilts and the image of the flag. So I started thinking about our flag and realizing there are so many stories in our country that don't get told, but we all recognize the flag as the symbol of our country. And so I thought it would be great to take the shape of the flag and fill it with the stories I want to share. And I think we can all do that, right? We can take a familiar symbol and fill it with our own ideas and colors and patterns. And this, I think Rosie Lee Tompkins does this in her quilts. And so let's look at some of her quilts. Okay, the first one is red and white. As we're looking at her quilts, I want you to think about shapes and colors. In this quilt, I see red and white triangles. I also see squares. And I'm calling squares the magical square because you can do so many things with it. One thing that we quilters do, and anyone can do this, is we make something called a half square triangle. If you look at her quilt, you can see little triangles that are put together and make a square. Exactly. Lauren's using the cursor to show it, right? So those are just two triangles put together. And then she's put a set of 4 of those half square triangles together in a 4 patch to make that little block. So imagine that these are all triangles. There's just so much you can do. Okay, next slide. Now this is another quilt made with triangles, half square triangles, but this quilt doesn't have any white at all. It's filled to the brim with color. And the word for that is saturated. If you've ever been swimming and you're soaking wet and you get your towel completely wet, it's just soaked with water. That is saturated. So this quilt is saturated with color. When you don't see any white, we call that saturated. Okay, next slide. This is another quilt with half square triangles, but she's using just really 2 colors, the dark green all the way to almost black and the yellow. And she's using the contrast in the colors to help you see the shapes of the triangles, right? We can see those triangles better because there's dark and there's light. So that's something to keep in mind when you're building your collage. When you mix the dark next to the light, it helps it show up more. Okay, next slide. Here's another beautiful quilt. If you look in the center, there are half square triangles, but they're really hard to see because the colors aren't very different. They're really dark, but they are half square triangles put together. This is what we call a monochromatic color scheme. Mono means 1. And so these are all shades of blue. And so this is just an example of how she's using color. And I want you to think about what colors you like. Do you like one color? Do you like bright colors? Just something to think about when you're seeing things that give you joy, things that, which markers you like to use when you're writing. Just think about color and how it makes you feel. Okay, next slide. These are smaller pieces that are good examples of little chunks of shapes that she's put together. So we see more half square triangles. We see blocks in the purple. Does everybody see this? Yeah, I hope so. Okay. And when blocks are put together, sometimes I showed you the 4 patch. The 9 patch is exactly what it says. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 squares. And it's the beginning of a checkerboard, right? I bet some of you have played lots of checkers. And if you look over my shoulder, you can see I made 9 patches too. Okay, next slide. Now these are some amazing quilts that Rosie Lee Tompkins made. They're beautiful. They have the half square triangles. They have the 9 patches and the 4 patches, and she's using all kinds of colors. She's got the patch of just blue in the middle of that one, and then she's got different size chunks of half square triangles, and she's also made some stripes that I think you can see up in that corner on the left. So, and if you're looking at my samples, you'll notice I'm just using brown paper bags that I cut up from the grocery store and just pieces of paper. So that's what we are going to do pretty soon. All right, next slide. So here's another flag, well, a quilt, pardon me, made by Rosie Lee Tompkins, and she's using designs that come from our flag. She's using the blue background with the white stars. And I don't know if that was cut from an actual flag or just fabric, but she's put that into her quilt. And she's also put in the red and white stripes like we have in our flag. The other thing she's included are these pictures. So we see a full picture of Jesus, and we see a picture up in the top of the couple dancing. So she's using prints, she's using images. So this is something to keep in mind if you brought a photograph that you want to put into your collage. This is a great example of how Rosie did it. And then I also love her little stamp of Hawaii. That makes me think of your map on the wall. You could put in places that you want to travel. Okay, next slide. And this is what we had on our website to promote the event. When I look at this, I actually see sort of a flag. I think of that black strip almost as a flagpole. And then she has added in that actual image of a flag. So what I did is I just made a line drawing of her quilt, really simple, just where I believe she has sewn her pieces together. And this is something that can sort of guide you. You don't need to do it this way, but as you're figuring out what you want to put on your collage, you can think about, do you start at the beginning with the pictures? Do you want a flag in the center and to build around it? There's really not a right or wrong way to do it. You don't have to have stripes even. If you look at the flag up on my wall, there's actually several. I wonder if you can see the flags. There's this big flag, and then we've got this one, this one. Once you start seeing these, the big rectangle and the small rectangle, almost anything can start to look like a flag. So making these has really helped me think about just what America could be. And really, you're the future. So I hope we can all use our imaginations to imagine really, really good things for our country coming up. So I think it's time to start our art project. Are you ready? Okay. And if you want to start cutting anytime, go right ahead. Let's see. I will do a demo. Well, actually, before we start, can you hold up your backgrounds that you brought? Did you bring a background? Perfect. Perfect. That's so great. Okay. And oh, wow. I just love it. I love it. Okay. So I'm going to lay this background down. You don't need to draw a line there. I'm doing it as just an example if you want to make it look like a flag. So the thing I do to begin is I just cut up some shapes. So I'm going to show you how to cut a square. And these don't have to be perfect squares because we can always edit them. So here's just my piece of paper. I folded it in half and I'm folding it in half again. And I'm going to use my scissors to cut off the folded part because I don't like the wrinkles. They're okay, but I like to cut them off. And then this is more of a rectangle, so I'm just going to cut it again. And I've got several pieces now. So now I've got 4 squares. And remember when I said the square was magic? Oh,
Remember,
awesome. That
you
looks
can
good.
unmute yourself and talk if you want.
Yeah, please feel free. I'm talking fast because I'm so excited.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Is it okay if we don't have pictures?
totally. Absolutely. Yeah, and I didn't say this clearly in the beginning, but I want to make sure I'm telling you this. I'm thinking of us as explorers. We're not trying to finish anything, we're exploring. I see that, Lulu. That's nice. You got 2 sides on your paper. That's really fun. So really, I want us to think about this as an experiment where we're trying lots of things. Yeah. Okay. So with the square, I stack my papers up so I can do it faster. I can get more done at the same time. To make my triangles, I see an imaginary line. I don't draw a line. I just see an imaginary line. And I cut right across. And then I've got my triangles. And a fun thing to do is if you stack 2 kinds of paper and cut at the same time, I'm going to fold these together. You'll actually get 2 different colors of the halves of the whatever shape you're cutting. So I'm going to cut some strips here. And they don't even have to be the same color. How's it going? I see Micah has some nice paper. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Now remember, these are just ideas, but this is a piece of paper that I actually glued little triangles from the brown paper bag on top of. I'm cutting some more strips. And a fun thing you can do with strips is use the strips to make squares. Okay. And once you've made triangles, here's a fun trick. I hope you're just thinking about some of these tricks and you can use them later on. Okay, so I can do two really magical things with this triangle. It was a square. I made it into a triangle. I can see an imaginary line right here, and I can make smaller triangles. I can also take this triangle, and if you can, you have to use your imagination, but when you practice, it'll start to become so easy. I can see a square right here. I can cut here, I can cut here and here, and I'll get a square and more little triangles. That looks so good, Josephina. That looks great. Awesome. Okay, so I did the first cut, and now I'm going to cut right here too. And now I've turned that into a square and two sets of smaller triangles. And what's so fun about paper is you can just keep changing the size to make it what you need it to be. Ellery, I love it. Nice.
And we will be sharing our art right at the end. We'll save a couple minutes towards the end where everyone can hold up their work and talk about it. So just
Okay.
keep working on those
Yeah.
wonderful collages.
I'm assuming everybody's happy and working. And if you have a question, feel free to shout it out in a nice Zoom voice. You know, this is your project. So really, you can do anything you want. I decided I might put this on a background. So if you decide that your base is too small, you can glue onto the back of your base, right? There's just so many things you can do. And feel free, as soon as you know where you want your shapes, you can glue them down. What I like to do sometimes is just play around with them. I call it auditioning. I let them be in different places. And actually on the other side of this, I made a little flag. And I thought I would audition some different things to go on top. I could use the red. I could try the yellow. I might make it a little bit smaller and just see what I like. see what makes me happy. And if it hangs off over the edge, I can just take my scissors and give it a trim. I wish we could all be in the same place so I could really see you in person, but this is fun, and I hope you take with you the idea to explore with shapes and colors and to use your voice in whatever you're making, and to think about making our world better through art. And I also wanted to shout out to BAMFA for the studio, the family guide that was made with the exhibit for Rosie Lee Tompkins. There's some really, really good activities in that guide. So you should definitely check that out. And I hope we can all make art together in person one day. So stay creative, keep exploring, and can you spotlight my workspace for 1 second?
Yes, of course.
Ta-da! Don't take it too seriously. Have fun.